Welcome to the Psychology Undergrad. I am currently looking at a desk situation that can only be described as a fire hazard. I've got 3 empty coffee cups, a cat sleeping on the one page of notes I actually need, and a textbook that I'm fairly certain weighs more than my laptop.
I see your fire hazard, and I'll raise you a system of color-coded sticky notes that has slowly devolved into just absolute chaos. I think orange was supposed to be biological factors, but now it's just marking everything I don't understand, which is a lot of orange.
That's the universal sign of a psych student in crisis.
Ugh.
But look, we are in the trenches today. We are prepping for the big deep dive into the anxiety disorders chapter, and honestly, this is the one I've been kind of dreading and looking forward to at the same time.
Oh, totally. It is the heavyweight champion of the midterm, for sure. But it's also the one that feels the most, personal. I think everyone, regardless of their major, has felt that tighten in the chest feeling before a deadline.
Exactly. The classic cliche is that anxiety is the common cold of mental health, which implies it's everywhere, but maybe not that serious, just a sniffle. But as we were going through this chapter, reading the case studies, the DSM criteria, I realized that calling it a common cold completely undersells it.
It trivializes it. It really does, because we aren't just talking about exam nerves here. We are talking about a massive spectrum. It goes from, yikes, there's a snake on the trail, to, like, I am physically incapable of moving my house, or I feel like I will die.
Right. And our mission today is to turn these chaotic notes into something that actually makes sense. We need to do more than just memorize definitions for the test. We need to, understand the mechanics. We need to define the beats, break down the specific phobias, look at the strange biology behind them, and figure out how the treatments actually rewire the brain.
And we have to talk about the theories that explain why we worry, because some of the stuff in this chapter, like the idea that worrying makes us feel better, that sounded completely insane to me until I read the research.
So grab your highlighters, listeners. We are entering the anxiety zone. Let's start with the basics. What exactly is anxiety? Because my body knows what it is. It's sweating before this recording starts.
Yeah.
But how does the academic literature, define it?
Well, the text makes a crucial distinction right off the bat. We have to separate normal anxiety from clinical anxiety disorder. Because, if we didn't have any anxiety, we wouldn't be here.
Right. Normal anxiety is adaptive.
In the evolutionary sense, absolutely. It keeps us alive.
Yep.
If you are a Paleolithic human and you see a bear, you want anxiety. You want that massive dump of cortisol and adrenaline. You want your vision to tunnel and your muscles to prime.
Yeah, if you looked at that bear and felt chill, you'd be lunch.
Exactly. Anxiety is the engine revving up to save your life.
Yeah.
Even in modern life, a little bit of anxiety is what motivates you to study for this exam. If you had zero anxiety, you'd probably just sleep through this semester.
I have considered that strategy. It doesn't end well. So normal anxiety is the engine revving up to get us moving. But clinical anxiety is when the engine just won't turn off.
Precisely. The text lists 4 criteria for it to be a disorder.
Okay.
It has to be chronic, meaning it lasts a long time. It must be relatively intense, so disproportionate to the actual threat. It must cause significant distress. And this is the big one for diagnosis.
Okay.
It has to impair your role functioning.
Role functioning, that's the clinical way of saying, can you do your job? Can you go to class? Can you hang out with your friends?
Right. If the fear is dictating your life choices, like if you're skipping class because you can't handle the thought of being called on, we are crossing into disorder territory.
And the book breaks it down into 3 components, the trinity of anxiety, if you will. The physiological, the cognitive, and the behavioral. I feel like we should unpack these because they show up in every single disorder we're going to talk about.
They really do. Let's start with the physiological. This is the body's response, the sympathetic nervous system.
That's the revved up engine. Heart rate spikes, mouth goes dry, shortness of breath. It's your body basically preparing for battle.
Correct. It's diverting blood flow to the muscles and away from digestion, which is why your stomach feels weird. Then you have the cognitive component. This is the mind's spin cycle.
This is the part that keeps me up at night. The worry, the rumination, the, future-focused thinking. It's constantly asking, what if? What if I fail? What if they laugh? What if the plane goes down?
It's a prediction machine that is stuck on catastrophe. And finally, you have the behavioral component.
Yeah.
This is what we do about the anxiety.
And usually what we do is avoid.
Avoidance is key. Or we engage in safety behaviors. Maybe you drink alcohol to cope at a party, or you bring a safe person with you to the store. It's any behavior designed to minimize that distress.
And here is the thing that stood out to me in the intro. The text shared the story of Kate Waddingham.
The student from the University of Ottawa.
Yeah. She talked about how she struggled with severe anxiety, but she didn't want to get help because she was embarrassed. She felt like it wasn't a real thing or that she was the only one dealing with it.
That really highlights the stigma. But then, right next to her story, they put Alan Rock,
The former Minister of Health and President of U of Ottawa.
the guy running the university. He admitted to having panic attacks when he was an undergrad.
That contrast just blew my mind. You look at these successful people and you assume they are bulletproof, but Rock talked about not knowing where to turn. It connects to this moral weight we put on anxiety. We treat it like a character flaw.
We do. We tend to equate calmness with virtue and strength and anxiety with weakness or like a lack of faith. We tell people to just get over it, which is like telling someone with a broken leg to just walk it off.
It's a biological condition, not a moral failing. The text offered a really good mnemonic or, a pop idea to reframe this. Think of anxiety as a false alarm system.
Oh, I love that analogy. It's supposed to detect tigers.
Right. It's a smoke detector. If your smoke detector goes off at 3 a.m. because you burned some toast, the detector isn't broken in the sense that it doesn't work. It just works too well. It's hypersensitive.
It's detecting tigers when it's actually just a final exam or a social gathering or a spider. The goal of therapy isn't to smash the smoke detector. We need it for real fires. The goal is to, recalibrate the sensitivity.
Speaking of recalibrating, let's slide into section 1. The specific flavors of anxiety, specific phobias, snakes, storms, and cell phones.
We will get to the cell phones, I promise. But let's look at the definition.
All right.
A specific phobia is an unwarranted fear caused by specific objects or situations. And the key here, the thing that drives patients crazy, is that the sufferer usually recognizes that the fear is groundless.
That's the worst part. You know the spider isn't going to murder you. You know the elevator cable is safe. But you are standing there screaming anyway. It feels completely uncontrollable.
It's a total disconnect between the logical brain and the emotional brain. The DSM-5 breaks these down into categories. You've got animals, spiders, dogs, snakes.
Oh.
You have natural environment heights, storms, water. You have situational elevators, planes, enclosed spaces. And then there's the other category, which includes things like choking, vomiting, or clowns.
Clowns definitely deserve their own category. But let's go back to the weird one. Blood injection injury.
Ah, the outlier. This is fascinating from a physiological perspective.
This is where it gets really interesting. With every other phobia, you see a bear, you see a cliff, your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, you get ready to run. But with blood injection injury,
It's the complete opposite. You get an initial spike of panic, but then you have a dramatic drop in heart rate and blood pressure. It's a massive vasovagal response. That's why people faint.
which makes no sense evolutionarily, right? If a tiger bites you, why would you faint? You'd get eaten.
There are a few theories. One is that if you are bleeding, dropping your blood pressure might minimize blood loss. Another is that it's a playing dead mechanism to make a predator lose interest. I'm not sure I buy that one, but,
Whatever the reason, it means the treatment has to be totally different.
Exactly. Usually if someone is anxious, we tell them to relax, breathe, find your zen. If you tell someone with a blood phobia to relax, you are helping them pass out. You are literally talking them into the floor.
So what do you do?
The treatment is called applied tension. You actually have to tense your muscles, clench your fists, tighten your legs to keep your blood pressure up.
Don't relax. Tense up. That goes against everything else we learned in this chapter.
It really does. Now let's talk about the new kid on the block, nomophobia.
No mobile phone phobia. Is this actually real, or are we just, making fun of Gen Z for being on TikTok too much?
It's a legitimate debate in the field, I think. The text treats it as a serious emerging issue. It defines the dimensions as the inability to communicate, being disconnected, and inability to access information.
I mean, I feel that. If I leave my phone at home, I feel naked, I feel cut off. But is it a phobia?
That's the student analysis question, isn't it? Is it a phobia of the phone or is it a dependency? The case studies link it to a need for safety. For some people, the phone is a safety signal.
Like a safety blanket.
Exactly. Think about agoraphobia. Often, patients can only go out if they have a safe person with them. The phone has become the digital version of that safe person. It's the lifeline to help. If that lifeline is cut, if the battery dies, the panic sets in because they feel vulnerable.
So it's less about the device itself and more about the connection to safety. That makes it feel less like a kids these days thing and more like a genuine anxiety response.
Agreed. Now, the big question, where do these phobias come from? Etiology.
We have a cage match here between 3 different theories. In corner one, Sigmund Freud.
The psychoanalytic perspective. Freud always brings it back to internal conflict. He had his famous case, Little Hans, who was terrified of horses.
And Freud, being Freud, said, it's not about the horse.
Right, he argued the fear was displaced anxiety from a repressed conflict. Specifically, a fear of his father. Hans was afraid of his dad, but that's too scary to process, so his mind performed a trick. It, displaced the fear onto the horse.
So the horse is a symbol, the phobia is a defense mechanism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a moral or religious parallel there, too. The idea of sin or forbidden impulses being turned into external fears to avoid dealing with the internal guilt. It's a fascinating narrative.
But then the behaviorists walk in, drop a microphone, and say, you are overthinking it. Enter Watson and Rayner.
And poor little Albert.
Yeah.
This is classical conditioning 101.
Yeah.
They took a baby who wasn't afraid of a white rat, but every time the rat appeared, they banged a loud steel bar behind his head.
Loud noise equals scary. Loud noise plus rat equals rat is scary.
Simple association. You don't need repressed issues with your father, you just need a bad experience.
But we also learn by watching, right, modeling.
Vicarious learning.
Yeah.
If you watch your mom scream every time she sees a spider, you learn that spiders are dangerous. The text mentions a study where monkeys learn to fear snakes just by watching videos of other monkeys fearing snakes.
Monkey fear. But this leads to the third theory, which I think is the most compelling, the prepared learning concept.
This explains why we have phobias of snakes and not pajama pants.
Exactly. If it's just conditioning, I should be able to condition a fear of anything.
But you can't. In those monkey studies, they tried to edit the video so the monkeys looked like they were screaming at a flower.
And did the observer monkeys learn to fear the flower?
No, they watched it and didn't care at all.
So we are hardwired to fear snakes and heights.
We are prepared to learn those fears. Evolution has primed us to fear things that threatened our ancestors. Snakes, deep water, heights. It is very easy to teach a human to fear a snake. It is very hard to teach a human to fear a flower or a lamb.
Because lambs didn't eat our ancestors.
Exactly. We are running ancient software in a modern world.
Before we leave phobias, I want to touch on the cross-cultural link. The text mentioned Peleng in China.
Yes, the fear of the cold or loss of body heat.
This blew my mind because it shows how culture shapes biology. It's tied to yin and yang philosophy.
Right. Yin is cold and passive. Yang is hot and active. The cultural belief is that losing body heat is a loss of life force. So someone with this phobia isn't just chilly. They are experiencing an existential threat based on their cultural worldview.
It really shows that you can't just take a Western diagnosis and slap it on the whole world. Context matters.
Absolutely. 100%.
Okay, moving on to section 2. The one that hits a little too close to home for me, social anxiety disorder, SAID.
SAID. The persistent fear of being judged or scrutinized by others. And we need to be clear, this is not just shyness.
Right. Shyness is, I'm a little quiet at parties. SAD is, I can't go to the party because I'm convinced everyone will see me shaking and think I'm a loser.
The triggers are usually public speaking, social interactions, or even just being observed like eating in public or writing while someone watches.
Oh, writing while someone watches is a nightmare. I suddenly forget how to spell my own name. My signature turns into a scribble.
That's a perfect example. And the core fear, according to Moscovich's theory, which is the name we should probably remember for the exam, is the belief that the self is deficient.
The self is deficient? That sounds heavy.
It is. It's the deep-seated belief that you are fundamentally lacking and that social situations will expose this lack to the world. It's not just a fear of making a mistake. It's a fear of being revealed as broken.
And there's a moral link here, too, isn't there? It's the fear of being seen as foolish or weak or like failing your social obligations. It's a fear of status loss.
Exactly. And the cognitive aspect creates this vicious cycle. We call it attentional bias.
That's the heat-seeking missile thing.
Right. If you have SA, you scan the room for negative feedback. You could give a speech to 100 people. 99 are smiling. One guy is frowning because he has a headache. Who do you look at?
The frowning guy. And I assume he hates me and everything I stand for.
You lock onto him. He confirms your theory that you are deficient. You just ignore the 99 smiles.
And then, after the event, you engage in post-event processing. Or, as the text calls it, the autopsy.
Oh, the autopsy. This is lying in bed 3 days later thinking, why did I say that? I sounded so stupid. They must think I'm an idiot.
It's ruminating on what went wrong. You relive the social failure over and over, which just cements the anxiety for next time. It's just self-torture.
And how do people cope? The text brings up Ricky Williams, the NFL player.
A fascinating case. A Heisman Trophy winner, professional athlete dealing with crippling social anxiety disorder. He would do interviews with his helmet on because he felt so exposed.
And he used cannabis to cope, which highlights the substance abuse connection.
High comorbidity with alcohol and marijuana. It's liquid courage.
It's a safety behavior.
Mhm.
I can only handle this party if I have a drink in my hand. It works in the short term. It lowers the physiological arousal, but it prevents you from actually learning that you can handle the situation sober.
Yeah, you credit the alcohol for your survival, not yourself.
Precisely. Now let's contrast this with the Japanese variant, Taijin Kyofusho, or TKS.
This is a beautiful example of how culture shapes pathology. In Western SAD, the fear is individualistic. I am afraid I will be judged. I am afraid I will be embarrassed.
Me. It's all about the self.
But in Japan, which is a more collectivist culture, TKS is the fear of offending others.
Wait, so it's not, I'm afraid I'll look stupid. It's, I'm afraid my sweating or my gaze will make you uncomfortable.
Exactly. It's the fear of harming the group harmony. It's a moral obligation to the group. The symptoms are similar: blushing, sweating, avoiding eye contact, but the cognitive interpretation is completely different.
That is so nuanced. In the West, the anxiety is about protecting the ego. In Japan, it's about protecting the community.
Okay, section 3. The internal storm. Panic disorder and agoraphobia.
These are the heavy hitters of physiological symptoms. If general anxiety is a slow burn, panic disorder is an explosion.
A panic attack sounds terrifying. The text describes it as heart palpitations, choking, dizziness, and this overwhelming cognitive feeling of going crazy or dying.
It is a visceral terror. An interesting cultural note here, the text mentions kayak angst.
Kayak angst. Inuit hunters alone at sea.
Imagine being alone in a kayak, freezing water, total isolation, no landmarks. The disorientation and fear that sets in, it's a culturally specific form of panic associated with that specific environment.
That sounds like an absolute nightmare. Now, panic disorder is when you have these attacks, but it's more than that, right? It's the worry about the attacks.
Yes. Recurrent unexpected attacks, plus the worry about future attacks, plus a behavior change. You start altering your life to avoid the panic.
Which leads us directly to agoraphobia.
Literally fear of the marketplace.
But it's not just fear of shopping or open spaces.
No, that's a common misconception. It's fear of situations where escape is difficult or help isn't available if a panic attack hits.
So you could be afraid of an open field or a crowded theater or a bus. The common thread is, I'm trapped.
And so you create a safety zone, usually your home.
Yeah.
And your world just shrinks. The case study of Marco Polo was heartbreaking. She lived in her safety zone for decades.
She saw the mind as a computer that produces what you feed it. If you feed it fear, it produces terror.
And she missed out on so much life. It really shows the cost of avoidance.
Now, biologically, what causes this? Why does the alarm go off? We have the false alarm theory again.
We have to look at the brainstem. The locus ceruleus.
The locus ceruleus. That sounds like a Harry Potter spell.
It does. But it's the part of the brainstem involved in noradrenergic activity. It's the body's alarm bell. In panic disorder, this bell is incredibly sensitive.
And the button that rings the bell seems to be sensitive to cholecystokin or CCK.
Right. It's a peptide. If you inject it into people, it triggers panic. People with panic disorder seem hypersensitive to it.
But here is the concept that I think is the most important takeaway for this section, and maybe for the whole chapter. Anxiety sensitivity, the fear of fear.
This is a crucial distinction. It explains why two people can feel the exact same sensation and one panics while the other doesn't.
Walk me through it.
Okay, imagine you run up a flight of stairs. Your heart is pounding. You are short of breath.
I think, wow, I am really out of shape.
Right. You attribute the sensation to exercise. You have low anxiety sensitivity. But someone with high anxiety sensitivity feels that racing heart and thinks, oh my God, this feels like a heart attack. Something is wrong.
They interpret the somatic sensation as catastrophic.
Exactly. They did a study to prove this, the carbon dioxide challenge.
Oh, this one is mean.
It is. They made people breathe air with high CO2 levels. It makes you feel short of breath and dizzy, which is harmless but really uncomfortable.
And the result.
People with low anxiety sensitivity just felt weird. They wrote it out. People with high anxiety sensitivity, they panicked because they interpreted the sensation as a sign of imminent danger.
So the problem isn't the sensation, it's the interpretation of the sensation.
Which means the treatment has to be wild. Interoceptive exposure.
The straw trick.
If the fear is the sensation, you have to expose them to the sensation. To cure the fear of suffocation, you make them breathe through a narrow straw. To cure the fear of dizziness, you spin them in a chair.
That sounds like torture. You're afraid of being dizzy. Get in the spinny chair.
It sounds like it, but it rewires the brain. It's all about decoupling. You teach the brain, see, you are dizzy, but you aren't dying. You are safe. You separate the sensation from the catastrophe.
That is such a powerful concept, decoupling the sensation from the catastrophe. Okay, section 4, the what-if machine, generalized anxiety disorder, or GAD.
This is the chronic worrier. Excessive, uncontrollable worry about everything. Health, finances, being late, the cat, the weather.
It's the inability to turn it off. And the core driver here is the intolerance of uncertainty.
This is a huge concept.
Yeah.
People with GD cannot handle the unknown. They need to know for sure that everything will be okay.
Which is impossible. Life is 90% unknown.
Exactly. So they are in a constant state of a parental avoidance conflict. They want to solve the problem. That's the approach.
Yeah.
But they fear the anxiety that comes with the uncertainty. That's the avoidance.
But here is the part that blew my mind. Borkowicz's theory on the function of worry. Because logically, worry feels bad. So why do we do it? Why does the brain keep doing something that makes us miserable?
This is the counterintuitive pop idea you need to remember. Borkowicz argues that worry is actually a negative reinforcement.
How can worrying be reinforcing? That makes no sense.
Okay, think about how you worry. When you are worrying about an exam, how does it manifest?
It's a voice in my head. What if I fail? What if I forget everything? It's all words.
Exactly. It is verbal and linguistic. You are talking to yourself.
Yeah.
Borkowicz's found that by staying in your head in that verbal processing, you are actually suppressing physiological arousal and emotional imagery.
Wait, so I'm using words to block out pictures.
Yes, the pictures, imagining yourself failing, seeing the disappointment on your parents' faces, that is visceral. That causes a massive spike in heart rate and emotion. But the verbal worry, that's a lower level constant hum.
So I worry to avoid feeling.
Precisely. Worry acts as an emotional buffer. It's a defense mechanism. You keep yourself in a state of low-grade intellectual misery to avoid the spike of high-grade emotional terror.
That explains so much. It's like reading the spoiler for a scary movie so you don't get startled. You spoil the ending to avoid the shock.
And because the catastrophe usually doesn't happen, the act of worrying is reinforced. I worry about a test and I didn't fail. Therefore, worrying kept me safe.
The superstition of anxiety. Biologically, though, there's a brain chemical involved here, too. GABA?
Gamma-aminobutyric acid.
I just call it the brain's brake fluid.
That's a good analogy. GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. It slows down neuronal firing. GAGI is often linked to a deficiency in GABA.
If you don't have enough brake fluid, your brain can't slow down.
Exactly. Benzodiazepines drugs like Valium work because they attach to GABA receptors and boost its effect. They pump the brakes.
But we can't just rely on brake fluid forever. We need to fix the driver. Which brings us to section 5, treatments. The road to recovery.
We have a full toolbox here. But the gold standard for almost all anxiety disorders is CBT cognitive behavioral therapy, and specifically exposure.
We've talked about this a bit. Facing the fear, avoiding feeds anxiety, exposure starves it.
Correct. You have in vivo exposure, real life, touching the spider, getting on the plane.
Nope, not touching the spider.
You have to do it if you want to get better. But technology is helping. Virtual reality, VR.
This is so cool. You can put on a headset and fly a plane or stand in front of a virtual audience.
And the studies show it's almost as effective as the real thing. It triggers the same physiological response, so the brain learns the same lesson.
And there's augmented reality, or AR now too. Crushing virtual spiders on a real desk. I can maybe handle a digital spider.
It's a stepping stone. Then you have cognitive restructuring. This is about challenging the catastrophic thinking.
I loved the example from Clark called widening the bandwidth.
This is specifically for social anxiety. The patient believes they have to act perfectly within this narrow bandwidth of behavior. If they step out of it, if they stutter, or spill a drop of coffee, it's a disaster.
So the therapy is to intentionally act awkward.
Yes, they assign social mishaps. Go to a store and drop your change. Ask a stupid question, stumble over your words, and then see what happens.
And usually what happens is nothing. The clerk helps you pick up the change. Nobody laughs.
Exactly. The world doesn't end. You learn that the bandwidth of acceptable behavior is much wider than you thought. You realize people are generally forgiving or, they just don't care.
That sounds terrifying, but also so liberating. Now let's look at the drug cabinet. Pharmacology.
We mentioned benzodiazepines, Valium, Xanax.
The brake fluid.
Right. Good for crises, but highly addictive. They're a short-term fix, not a long-term solution.
Then you have SSRIs and SNRIs, Prozac, Paxil, venlafaxine.
These are the first-line treatments for most disorders, except specific phobias. They work on serotonin and norepinephrine. They take longer to work weeks usually, but they're much safer long-term.
And then there's the drug that sounds like science fiction. D-cycloserine, or DCS, the memory booster.
This is fascinating research. It's actually an antibiotic used for tuberculosis. But they found it affects the NMDA receptor in the amygdala, which is involved in learning and memory.
So you take it before therapy.
Yes. It's not an anti-anxiety pill. It's a learning pill. It speeds up the extinction of fear. If you take DCS and then do exposure therapy, you learn, I am safe faster.
But there's a massive risk, right? The text said makes good exposures better and bad exposures worse.
Exactly. It locks in the memory of the session. So if you have a great therapy session where you conquer your fear, it locks in that safety. But if you take DCS, try to hold a spider, have a massive panic attack, and run out of the room screaming.
It locks in the trauma.
It solidifies the fear memory. It's a double-edged sword. It emphasizes that the quality of the therapy matters more than the drug itself.
That's high-stakes therapy. Finally, we have mindfulness and acceptance.
This is the shift away from control.
Because trying to control anxiety often just creates more anxiety. It's the don't think of a white bear problem.
Right. Acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT, utilizes decentering, viewing thoughts as just events in the mind.
So I am having the thought that I am dying rather than I am dying.
It creates distance. You watch the thought pass like a cloud. You don't have to engage with it.
And finally, the moral action as therapy-loving kindness.
There was a study showing that doing kind acts for others actually reduced social anxiety.
How does that work?
Well, anxiety is incredibly self-focused. How do I look? How do I feel? What are they thinking of me? Doing acts of kindness forces you to focus outward. It forces you to look at others.
It breaks the self-absorption. So being a good person is actually good for your mental health. I like that.
It connects back to the idea that anxiety isolates us and connection heals us.
All right, we have covered a mountain of material. It is time for the Psychology Undergrad wrap-up.
Let's recap for the exam. Anxiety is a mix. It's biology GABA deficiency, genetics, the hypersensitive locus coeruleus. It's psychology, the intolerance of uncertainty, the self is deficient, the belief that worry keeps us safe.
And it's environment trauma, learning, modeling, and even culture.
And the take-home message. The one thing you need to remember for the exam and for life.
Avoidance feeds anxiety. Exposure starves it.
If you face the tiger, you learn it's just a paper tiger. If you run, it stays a monster.
But before we sign off, I want to leave the listeners with a provocative final thought. Something that wasn't explicitly in the chapter but kept popping into my head while we were talking about anxiety sensitivity.
What's that?
We talk about anxiety sensitivity, the fear of discomfort, the belief that feeling bad is dangerous.
Yes.
Look at the modern world. We have air conditioning, we have painkillers for every ache, we have algorithms that only show us opinions we agree with, we have safe spaces, we have engineered a world to eliminate discomfort.
We have removed the friction from life.
So, if we view all discomfort as dangerous, a failure of the system, are we creating a society that is increasingly anxious simply because we have lost the tolerance for uncertainty?
That is a profound question.
Yeah.
If the muscle for tolerating discomfort atrophies because we never use it, then even a small amount of stress feels like a catastrophe.
Exactly. Are we making ourselves allergic to life?
So, listeners, here is your homework. Observe your own safety behaviors this week. What are you avoiding? Are you looking at your phone to avoid eye contact in the elevator? Are you skipping that class because you haven't read the chapter? What are you avoiding and what is it costing you?
And maybe, just maybe, try widening the bandwidth a little bit. Spill a drink, be awkward, see what happens.
You might find out the world is a lot more forgiving than you think.
Thanks for listening to the Psychology Undergrad. Good luck studying.
See you next time.